So let's talk about the emotion of fear. It is a primary emotion. Fear is worry, fear, whatever word you want to put to it, but it is a primary emotion. It is typically a signal that something is amiss, right? Need to pay attention to something. There's caution to be had or something to be careful about, right? That's what fear or that signal is trying to tell you. Part of the problem with fear is it gets big, but it isn't bad, right? The emotion of fear isn't a terrible thing. Part of the problem is that it becomes a rumination or a thought that people have a really hard time turning off. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it today, because it can become overwhelming or even debilitating for some people. One of the things that it's beneficial, and this is just one of them, there are a few of them, is that it can protect us, right? You have again, I refer to it like as a signal. That's what emotions are, is like there's a signal or something that's telling you, hey, probably shouldn't be doing that. Be careful about something. Probably shouldn't go into a bad neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning and take a walk. That is a good thing, right? It is protecting us. It is telling us to be cautious or to be careful. That's a good thing. That's something that is beneficial for us to protect us from something bad that could potentially happen, right? So fear in all cases is not necessarily a bad thing. Another example would be a fear of like breaking a rule of some kind, right? Like, for example, when you're driving down the road and there's a stop sign or a red light, fear is, hey, I could get into trouble, or I could cause an accident, or there could be a car coming in the other direction because it's red light or a stop sign. Again, fear is there to say, hey, probably shouldn't do that. You need to be cautious, be careful. Again, remember those words we just talked about a second ago. Be careful, something is amiss, you should be cautious about something, right? So again, fear is not always a bad thing, can help to protect us and prevent something bad from happening. Our fear instincts can be beneficial to help to keep us safe. Part of the challenge, I will call it, is that we live in a world that is saturated with information, right? You can access information from our phones, from our computers, from our televisions, literally 24 hours a day. And a lot of this information can be fear-based. So when we have so much information that we can be saturated with, we have fears that can kind of run rampant inside of our heads. So these types of fears can be larger, irrational, bigger, illogical, that maybe under different circumstances would not have been so because we didn't have all of this information. But you know, good or bad, whichever way you want to look at it, we are inundated with this information now. So these fears that we didn't used to have access to consistently, we now have access to all the time. And so now these fears that are consistently there and we can access all the time is adding to, you know, some of these fear-based types of thinking. There's a lot of research that has been done that this could be why there is such an uptick in the diagnosis of anxiety, because there's so much more information that we have access to, and causes this fear to increase and get worse. So then because of the fear and information, causes us to worry and be scared and fearful of more information. Not fearful of more information necessarily, but fearful of these things that could potentially happen, because there's, you know, now we have a world worth of information rather than just a city's worth of information that we used to have access to. So do you ever find yourself getting stuck in like a loop of thoughts, right? The thoughts of fear go around and around and around. You have a hard time turning that off. Maybe these worries stop you from engaging fully in your life or making a decision. This loop or these worries are just that, because the worries consistently are there, they prevent us from being able to fully engage in our life. And again, going back to the decisions, like if you're trying to make a decision and you have this loop that consistently, this loop of fear rather, is around and around and around just happening, it would be really, really hard for you to make a decision, right? So I don't know, is this something that you're dealing with? Is this something that you find yourself having a difficult time to be able to make? Because it does prevent us from being able to, as I said, make a decision and or engage fully in our lives. What about worst case scenarios? The what if factor. I lightheartedly call it the worst two words in the English language when you are plagued with fear, right? You do this, well, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And so you're consistently looking for all of the worst scenarios that could potentially happen. The problem with this is that you will likely come up with the worst possible options of the situation that could happen, and the likelihood that these are going to happen are pretty slim. And yet your body is reacting to these scenarios. You're kind of starting to, I don't want to use the word panic because I think it can get overused a little bit, but it causes you to feel panic, right? It can stop you from wanting to do certain activities because you're like, well, what if this happens? And then I don't know how I will react, or I won't know what to do in certain situations. And so it can cause a lot of, it causes us to be debilitated, right? Fear is very debilitating, whether it is engaging and doing certain things or activities in our lives, or whether it is trying to make a decision. Because if you're just stuck in looking at all the worst case scenarios, you get stuck in a what if loop because you don't know what if this happens or what if that happens, and you just keep going around and around and around, your ability to just fully engage in life is going to be really, really hard to do. The worst case scenarios, as I mentioned a minute ago, not only are they pretty rare that those types of things happen, it's also exhausting and it's also very overwhelming, and it can even cause people to get stuck in these patterns of thinking that prevent them from sleeping, right? So I don't know if you can get stuck in a thought pattern like this, where then your ability to be able to, quote unquote, turn those loops off so you can fall asleep, that can be really hard and really overwhelming. When we get stuck in these worst case scenarios and thinking about the potential of something bad happening, your body can actually go into fight, flight, or freeze. So physiologically, your body is reacting to something. Now you've got your body flooded with hormones that you don't necessarily need because you're not in the situation, but you're reacting to a situation that is causing significant distress. Your brain is reacting because it believes that you are in need of these hormones, and so it releases them in order for you to protect yourself, but you don't need them. It's there to be beneficial for you. However, you're not in need of those in those moments, and your reaction to them is causing your body to be flooded with these hormones, causing you to stop, shut down, freeze, whatever your go-to reaction tends to be. Without the proper tools or ability to work through those, you can get stuck. I talked about a minute ago, your ability to get debilitated. This is a very debilitating process because it's really hard for you to not get stuck in these processes because your body's just reacting, and so it's hard for you to not move through that. If we take a situation that you are contemplating inside of your head, your reaction or your attempt to react to the situation, you're trying to mitigate a threat, right? Now, keep in mind, this fear is a perceived threat. It's not an actual threat, but you believe it to be an actual threat because it feels like an actual threat. So you're attempting to try to get away from whatever the problem is, to try to get through this threat or this problem. However, for you, it feels very real and feels very overwhelming. The people that are around you, they don't understand it because number one, they don't feel it. They're not inside of your head, so they don't know the things that are you're processing internally. They don't understand what it is that you're thinking. So for them, they don't get why it's even a problem at all. For you, it feels incredibly overwhelming. It feels incredibly stifling. It feels like you can't make a decision at all, and it feels like you just need to stop and not do anything. But the people that are around you feel like it's just irrational or illogical, which, to be fair, it is. You're not irrational or illogical. Let me be really clear. The fear is irrational or illogical. However, you being able to separate the two in those moments, it's really hard. And so that compassion level for those people that are around you in trying to support you or talk you through those situations is really hard, because what they're trying to do is support you and talk you through it, and what you're doing is trying to self-protect, right? You're trying to avoid the threat, stay away from whatever the problem is, and they don't see a problem at all. So their ability to be able to help you through a situation, it comes out as, for them, it probably feels like they're supporting you, but to you it probably feels very mean or cold. One way that you can help to manage this emotion-based reaction, because that's what fear is an emotion, is to use logic to try to work through some of these challenges, right? Some of them are through thought patterns, right? To be able to challenge some of the things that you're thinking by using logic-based type of tools. Some of them are mindfulness skills, which we've talked about in previous videos, to be able to get yourself back in the present moment so that you're not either in the future or the past, whichever one the fear is kicking you into. But being able to get yourself in a place where the logic brain is also engaged as opposed to only the emotion side of the brain. Because again, like we talked about at the beginning of this video, the emotion is fear, so you're fully engaged in the emotional side of the brain. So that's how logic can be helpful, to engage the logical side of the brain when the emotion fear is kicked up really strong. Fear can be very overwhelming. It can also feel very, very isolating. As we talked about before, other people who are not experiencing the same type of fear or the same type of emotion, they don't understand it. So it causes you to feel disconnected. It causes you to feel isolated. It's also keeping you from fully engaging in your life in one way or another. I would love to be able to help you to work through some of those things, because I get it. A lot of people don't really understand why these things prevent you from engaging in your life. I understand why you stop doing some of the things that you do, and maybe you haven't stopped yet, but let's prevent that from happening if you haven't stopped, so that you can keep engaging in your life, so that it doesn't prevent you from engaging in life. And let's help you manage this stress level to where it's a little bit more functional. So let me help you to continue to engage in your life, so that fear doesn't prevent you to continue to disengage in your life. I would love to help you if this sounds like something that you are interested in. Give me a call. I'd love to be able to talk through what that could look like. I know that this type of change is possible if it feels like maybe this has been in your life for so long and you don't feel like that this is a possibility. It is possible. I see this kind of change every single day, so I know that it is possible for this type of change to happen for you as well. So let me help you continue to engage in life.